Hello and welcome to Multiplying Fractions 5.4. Today students will be able to multiply fractions and write their answer as a reduced fraction, in other words, a simplified fraction. If you would like, you can watch this little rap song that can help you remember how to multiply fractions, but for right now we'll skip past that. Here are your steps for multiplying fractions. Step 1, you must make sure that you change any mixed numbers or integers into an improper fraction or into a fraction. Okay, you cannot multiply unless you have a fraction times a fraction. No mixed numbers, no integers. You're going to cross reduce in step number 2 if possible. Um, and I will explain more of what cross-reducing means here in a second. Step number 3, you're just going to multiply across the top. So multiply the two numerators together. That is your numerator for your answer. And then step 4, you're going to multiply across the bottom. So you will multiply the two denominators together to get the denominator for your answer. And step number 5, of course, we always want a simplified fraction as our answer. Notice there's nothing on here about having common denominators. You do not need common denominators in order to multiply fractions. So here's my first example. We are going to multiply 3/8 times 4/9 and write our answer in simplest form. Now step number 1 said that we need to make sure we change any mixed numbers to improper fractions. I don't see any mixed numbers here, so we'll move on to step 2, which says cross-reduce if possible. Now, here's what cross-reducing means. If we look at 3/8, we notice that fraction is completely simplified. And 4/9, that fraction is also completely simplified. But if we look across the fractions from 3 to 9, and if we pretend that's 3/9, that is not reduced all the way. Okay? 3/9 can be simplified. So we think about what number can I divide both 3 and 9 by, and right away I think of, well, 3. 3 is both a factor of 3 and 9. So I'm going to take 3 and divide it by 3, and I get 1. So I'm going to replace that 3 with 1, and 9 divided by 3 is 3. Okay, and I'm going to do the same thing then with 4/8. So I look across the fraction. 4/8 is not a simplified fraction. I can divide both 4 and 8 by 2, but I could also divide both of them by 4. And you actually want to choose the biggest number between those two, or in other words, you always want to choose the GCF. So I'm going to divide 4 by 4, and I get 1, and divide 8 by 4, and I get 2. And that is how you are going to cross reduce. So you look across the fraction, ask yourself what number you can divide both of them by, and then do so. So step number 3 and 4 just said multiply straight across. So I'm going to multiply 1 times 1 in the numerators, and that is 1. And I'm going to multiply in the denominators 2 times 3, which is 6. So 6 goes in my denominator. Step 5 says simplify your answer. Well, 1/6 is already simplified because we did the cross-reducing early on. 1/6. Now, if the cross-reducing seems really confusing to you, it is actually not required in order to multiply fractions. You can still get the correct answer without cross-reducing. So if we skip step number 2, we would just multiply the numerators together. 3 times 4 is 12, and 8 times 9 is 72. Multiply the denominators, get 72, and we get 12 70-seconds. However, that is not a simplified fraction, so I think about, okay, what do 12 and 72 have in common? Well, the first thing I recognize right away is that they're both even. So I could divide both of them by 2 to start simplifying. 12 divided by 2 is 6. 72 divided by 2 is 36. Okay, and I look at 6/36 and I say, oh, that's not simplified either. Again, they can still both be divided by 2, but I also recognize that they're both divisible by 6. So I'm going to go ahead and do that next, is divide both by 6 and see where that gets me. So 6 divided by 6 is 1. Anything divided by itself is 1. And 36 divided by 6 is 6. Okay, so I get 1/6, and that is completely simplified. And notice that's the exact same answer that we got when we cross-reduced, 1/6. So it is possible, and you will still get the same answer if you don't cross-reduce. However, your numbers might just get pretty large. Like 72 isn't so horrible, but sometimes if you don't cross-reduce, your numbers can get big, and then they become difficult to divide. Okay, let's try the next example. We've got 5/6 times 1/2. Okay, I might cross reduce first. Okay, so I look at my 5 and 2. Can 5 and 2 each be divided by the same number? No, because the only factors of 5 are 5 and 1. The only factors of 2 are 2 and 1, okay? So, no, they cannot be. How about 1 and 6? Those cannot be simplified either. 1/6 is simplified. So we're going to skip cross reducing and just move right into multiplying straight across. So we're going to multiply numerators. 5 times 1 is 5. Multiply denominators. 6 times 2 is 12. Okay, so I have 5/12. And again, I pause and I ask myself, can 5 and 12 each be divided by the same number? Well, the only thing I can divide 5 by is 5 and 1. Well, you can't divide 12 by 5. And dividing by 1 doesn't do anything. So 5/12 would be the correct simplified answer. Okay, example C. Now here is where step 1 is going to come into play. I have mixed numbers here. Okay, and a lot of students would jump right to, oh, I'm going to multiply the 4 times the 1 and I get 4. And I'm going to multiply 2 times 3 and get 6. 4 times 7 and get 28. Okay, this is actually completely wrong. You can't do that or you will not get the correct answer. You must change them into improper fractions. Okay, so just a quick review to change mixed number into improper fraction. You are going to multiply the denominator with the whole number piece, and then you're going to add, sorry, this is a little off, you're going to add on the numerator. So 4 times 4 is 16, plus 2 is 18, and our denominator will stay the same. So we're still going to keep 4 as our denominator. Okay, and that's multiplied by, again, we're going to do the same thing, 7 times 1, and then add the 3. So 7 times 1 is 7, plus 3 is 10. Again, we keep the same denominator, and that denominator was 7. Okay, and we are ready to, well, cross-reduce first. So we can look at 18 and 7. Do they have any factors in common, or can I divide them by the same number? Well, the only things that I could divide 7 by are 1 and 7. And I cannot divide 18 by 7. Okay, and again, dividing by 1 won't really make a difference. So no, I cannot reduce those anymore. However, I can look at 10 and 4 and think to myself, can I divide those by the same number? And the answer is yes, they are both divisible by 2. So if I divide 10 by 2, I get 5. Okay, so cross off that 10, put a 5. And if I divide 4 by 2, I get a 2. Okay, so I've cross-reduced to help keep my numbers a little bit smaller. So I'm just going to multiply numerators together. 18 times 5 is, and if you did that math, you would find that would be 90. Again, a little scratch work off to the side doesn't hurt, okay, to find out. And then 2 times 7 is 14. So I have 90 times 4, or sorry, 90 over 14. And again, is that simplified? The answer is no. You can divide both 90 and 14 by 2 for starters. They're both even. So go ahead, divide each by 2. 90 divided by 2 is 45. 14 divided by 2 is 7. So I have 45 sevenths. And again, can that be reduced any further? Can I divide both 45 and 7 by the same number? Your answer is no. So 45 sevenths is a perfectly lovely answer. However, I will also accept mixed number as an answer if you'd like. So I say, okay, how many times does 7 go into 45? Well, I know 7 times 6 is 42, so 6 whole times. And if 7 times 6 was 42, that would make me have 3 left over. So 6 and 3 sevenths would be the mixed number. So Either one of those answers is acceptable. And I just have one last example here. 6 times 1 and 1/7. Now this example is different from the rest because now I just have a whole number in my problem here. And when you have a whole number, you need to change that into a fraction. And the way that you change that into a fraction is very simple. You just put it over 1. Because dividing anything by 1 does not change the value. 6 divided by 1 is still 6. So you can put any whole number over 1 and it doesn't change the value. Okay, but I do see I have a mixed number here, so I need to convert that to a fraction as well. So 7 times 1, and then we'll add on the 1. Okay, so I'm going to do a little rewriting. I've got 6 over 1 times 7 times 1 is 7, plus 1 is 8, and again, I'll keep that denominator of 7. Okay, I should look for some cross-reducing if that's possible to do. And 6 and 7 are not divisible by the same number. And then I've got 8 and 1 also cannot cross-reduce those. So I'll just go ahead and multiply straight across. So 6 times 8 is 48. 1 times 7 is 7. So I get 48/7, and I should double check. Is that completely simplified? Well, the only thing that I could divide 7 by would be 7 and then 1. Well, I cannot divide 48 by 7 without having a remainder, so yes, it is simplified. And again, I would accept a mixed number as an answer. So how many times does 7 go into 48? Well, 7 times 6 again is 42, so 6 whole times. And then to go from 42 to 48, that's 6 left over. Okay, so 6 and 6/7 is also an appropriate answer. Okay, so moral of the story is you do not need common denominators, but you do need to make sure you have improper fractions before you start multiplying. Again, cross-reducing isn't necessary, but it will help you simplify your answer in the end. Okay, your worksheet for 5.4 worksheet will be homework for this lesson.